All right, everyone, welcome back. This is a fun day on Wednesday. It's actually our last session of the day today, but it is going to be a great session. It's been talked up all day by our previous speakers, but now we are joined by Linda Phillips from Jason Weiner PC. She is a deeply experienced lawyer. She has I could go on and on, but just so many years of experience with cooperatives and helping business owners understand not only how to start a cooperative, but maybe how to convert their business to a cooperative model. Hence the title of our session today, How to Start or Convert Your Business to a Cooperative, the Leading Edge Business Model. So I'm going to just turn it over to Linda, and thank you for being here, and have some fun.
And thank you, Morgan. And this is going to be a fun session for me because I can't see anybody except my slide presentation, which is great. I feel a little bit like Trevor Noah, where you don't have an audience that can laugh at your jokes. So if I start getting really boring and you start nodding out, send Morgan a note and he will interrupt and say, Linda, you need to tell a lawyer joke or something.
I can do that.
Okay. So how to start or convert a cooperative? We'll jump right in. My name is Linda Phillips. I am what is called Senior of Counsel with Jason Weiner PC. Our law firm has grown. We were at 3 or 4 attorneys. We're now up to 9 attorneys. We're spread out all over the country, but most of our work is done here in Colorado. So I'll be talking mostly about Colorado co-ops. We specialize in co-ops, and we specialize in social enterprise law and business consulting. And I'm also one of the co-founders of the Co-op Professionals Association. If you travel around the country and are interested in other co-ops, check out their association because you might find other co-op attorneys. So today we're going to talk about who the co-ops are around us currently. We have all different kinds of co-ops in our state, and I'm not going to talk today about just worker co-ops, but all different kinds of co-ops. Then we're going to talk about cooperative law and what are some of the basics for co-op law and co-op economics. We're going to have a short discussion on how to start a co-op and a short discussion on how to convert to a co-op, to a worker co-op. And I'm going to give you a list of resources and just hopefully have time at the end for 10-15 minutes of questions. Feel free to send your questions in to Morgan and he can share them with me at the end of the presentation. So cooperatives all around us. Most people are familiar with some of the agricultural co-ops. I'm not sure if you're familiar with REI, that's a consumer co-op. Namaste Solar has been mentioned a couple times today as a worker co-op. Ace Hardware is a co-op. That's what happens with Ace Hardware, and another one is Dairy Queen. They formed a co-op among all their franchisees for purchasing purposes, so they could buy things in bulk and sell them to their customers at a lower price. Ocean Spray is an agricultural co-op. Organic Valley is another agricultural co-op. Union Taxi and Green Taxi are both worker co-ops, transportation co-ops. So there's all different kinds of co-ops out there, and we're going to talk about how you can get started with one today. There are about 30,000 co-ops in the United States. Everybody likes to see statistics. $3 trillion in assets. They generate $500 billion annually and employ over 2 million workers. They're all over the place. So you've heard a couple of discussions today about what is a co-op, and it's mostly been discussions about worker co-ops. So I'm going to talk about co-ops in general. A co-op is any kind of organization where a group of people come together to help themselves. It's democratically owned and democratically controlled by its members. You've heard a lot already about one member, one vote. Well, that's the same for any kind of co-op, whether you're a franchisee in an Ace Hardware co-op or whether you're a worker co-op at Namaste Solar, it's one member and one vote. In Colorado, we have several different statutes that provide the legal structure and the setup for co-ops, called Articles 55, 56, and 58. Very exciting. I'm sure you'll remember that. Um, what I like to say about Colorado, we have really, really, really good co-op statutes. And so Jason and I coined the term and trademarked it that Colorado is the Delaware of co-op law. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of companies go to Delaware to form their business entities because Delaware has such great corporation statutes. Well, we like to think that Colorado, besides having really good statutes, it's really easy to form a co-op here in Colorado. Another thing about co-ops is you can have them own stock, or they can just be membership co-ops. We've had quite a few co-ops where the members were not comfortable with having stock or being a stock type of company. So they just were membership units in the cooperative rather than stock, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The interesting thing about co-ops that are unusual and different from a limited liability company or an S Corp or a C Corp or any kind of a corporation for that matter, or even a partnership, is that profits and losses are not distributed based on how much you own of the company. So for example, in a limited liability company, you've got 5 members, and so maybe one of them owns 10% and one of them owns 20% and another owns 40%. And profits and losses are distributed to those members based on what percentage of ownership they have in the company. That's not true in a co-op. In a co-op, your patronage or your distributions of profits and losses are based on how much you use the co-op. In a purchasing co-op, it might be how many products you purchase through the co-op. In a worker co-op, it might be based on hours or seniority or your job description or any formula. In a services co-op, it might be how much you purchase from the co-op, how much you use the co-op. So instead of your profits and losses being based on percentage of ownership, it's based on your usage. And that's why it's unusual for co-ops. Most people get a little confused about the difference between co-ops and LLCs. Is there's no actual percentage of ownership. Everybody has one member, one vote. Everybody is profits and losses are determined based on your use. A co-op can have members or patrons, and there's different definitions of patrons, but how it's used in this instance, think of an agricultural co-op. And you've got a group of farmers, say you've got a group of hemp farmers and they all want to get together and purchase services from the co-op. And so they form a co-op, a group of hemp farmers, and you have to be a hemp farmer to be a voting member of the co-op. But maybe they also have a gas station on the side, and maybe people come in and buy gas or buy tires from the gas station. Well, those would be patrons of the co-op, but not members of the co-op. Another thing about co-ops is they are operated at cost. Co-ops are not nonprofit entities. So if you're wanting to form a co-op in order to get grant funding from a foundation, it's not possible with the co-op. Co-ops are partially or wholly capitalized by their members, whether those are workers, producers, purchasers. In other words, if you start a co-op, you've got to come up with the money to put the co-op together. Your dividends on stock or your dividends on your interest is usually limited. In other words, you can't ask for 15% interest on preferred stock. And voting rights are limited to patron members or investor members. There are a couple different ways to tax a co-op. This is the boring part. You can either be taxed as a partnership, like in a limited liability company, or you can be taxed under a particular section of the Internal Revenue Code called Subchapter T. Everybody's heard of an S corporation. That's Subchapter S of the Internal Revenue Code. You probably always wondered where that S corporation came from. That's where it's from, Subchapter S. Subchapter T is a particular set of the part of the code, the Internal Revenue Code, that just deals directly with co-ops. Co-ops are really good business models. They're one of my favorite. I've been working with them for 20, 25 years because of their flexibility. You can create a co-op that totally matches what your goals are, what your mission is for your company. You can have non-members that participate in the co-op and receive a portion of the profits and losses. They just may not have voting rights. But it's carried on, it's a company that's carried on for the benefit of the members. And one big thing to remember is that members are not liable for any debt or liability of the co-op beyond their equity investment in the co-op. So you normally pay a membership fee, and we'll talk about that in a minute, to join a co-op, and you might have some other equity over time. But if the co-op gets into trouble or they get sued, you as an individual member are not liable for the debts of the co-op. Okay, so when I talk about co-ops, there's two different kinds, main ones here in Colorado. A cooperative corporation and an LCA. An LCA stands for Limited Cooperative Association. They're slightly different. The co-op corporation is the older version of co-ops. They've been around since 1996, the most modern version in Colorado. And the LCA was adopted here in Colorado in 2011. So that's gotten to be the more popular one, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Cooperative corporations, you have member voting rights, and they're usually the only ones that have voting rights. You can have multiple classes of members. You can have members without voting rights. You can have different classes of members with voting rights. You can have preferred stock in a cooperative corporation, but it's non-voting stock. And the main difference between a co-op corp and an LCA is that voting rights for members. The LCA was created by my old partner, as a matter of fact, and is now adopted in about 8 states, and a couple other states have similar statutes. And what it does is it allows investors to invest in a co-op. And investors can have limited voting rights. The members of the co-op, the patron members, always have majority voting rights and majority rights in regards to profits and losses. But it allows, if you've got somebody that's interested in your mission, who wants to support you and invest in you, then look for investors. They can have a seat on the board of directors. They can have limited voting rights. They can help you guide the direction of the co-op, but they can never take over. You can't have a venture capitalist come in and take over, or a group of investors come in and take over your company and still remain a co-op. The Internal Revenue Code we're going to talk about a little bit, but not terribly much, because it's not part of this discussion. One thing you can choose in either an LLC or similar to an LLC is you can elect to be taxed as a partnership instead of under Subchapter T. So if you're familiar with limited liability company or straight partnership taxation, that's possible in a co-op as well. So common capital structures. How do you get capital to get your co-op started? If you've got a co-op that's just a services co-op, say you're an online co-op and you're a group of artists that want to sell your artists, your co-op member services to the public or to a group of specific clients, you're not going to need a lot of capital. You're going to need money for a website. You're going to need money for a bookkeeper, and maybe and that could be a part-time thing, or money for a manager of some sort. So that's not going to require a whole lot of capital. So you go to the members for those particular capital needs. And that capital is usually in the form of a membership interest or common stock. In an LCA, a limited cooperative association, you can have investor members as well as patron members with common stock, with voting stock, and non-voting stock. And you can do combinations of any of those preferences. So you guys sit down with your group of people that want to form a co-op and say, how are we going to finance this? How are we going to get the money? What kind of money? And we'll talk about planning in a little bit. One of the advantages of Subchapter T taxing is that in a co-op, the profits and losses are distributed at the end of the year to the members based on their patronage, which I talked about a little while ago. But a subchapter T allows the co-op, the company, to set money aside in what they call reserves. So for example, next year you might want to buy a truck, or you might want to upgrade your computer system, or you might want to spend money on capital expenditures. In a subchapter T, you can set that money aside, and spend it next year. You will have to pay taxes on that money because it has not been distributed straight through to the members. But unlike a limited liability company that's taxed as a partnership, you cannot set money aside in an LLC. This allows you to do some financial planning and some financial structuring that allows you, if you've got the money and you don't need the capital, then you share all those profits and losses with your members. So how do you start a co-op? Services. Let's talk about planning. I often talk to people that are starting businesses, whether it's a co-op or a limited liability company or anything else, is do you have a business plan? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. So my first question to anybody that wants to start a co-op is, what services are you going to be providing to your members? If it's a worker co-op, then jobs are obviously what the services are going to be. If it's a services co-op, say I'll use my artist co-op as an example, you're going to be offering marketing, bookkeeping, scheduling. If it's a purchasing co-op, you're going to be obtaining bulk rates from your vendors for your members, or you're going to be obtaining services that the vendors can provide, or rebates that the vendors can provide directly to your members. So you have to think about, okay, say it's a construction company. You're going to have jobs, but say your members provide really specialized services and they want to stay as independent contractors. They don't want to be employees of the co-op. So they may not necessarily be W-2 employees. They may be regular independent contractors. They may provide services for the public from outside of the customers of the co-op. So you set it up as an independent contractor co-op, and the co-op might provide bookkeeping, might provide scheduling, might find jobs for these independent contractors, might do customer service, so the customers call in to the co-op directly, and the co-op tells the customer who's going to be coming out to give them a bid, all of that. Then the bookkeeping side of it, so if it's an independent contractor co-op, the bookkeeping side of it, the members say, okay, I've done this job, can you bill the customer for me? And the contractor has an agreement with the co-op outside of their membership agreement that says this is the services they're going to provide, this is how much they're going to charge for those services. The co-op usually will take a small percentage of whatever the fee is that independent contractor is charging the customer to cover the back office, bookkeeping, and marketing, and all of the services that the co-op provides. This type of co-op doesn't usually have a whole lot of profit, but that's not meant to make a profit. It's meant to provide services for its members, and it's meant to provide a method for those members to get services that they couldn't afford on their own. Not everybody can afford a bookkeeper, but if you all go in together and there's 10 of you, you can have one bookkeeper that provides services for all of you. So you need to think about, okay, what are the services? Then you need to talk about and talk among yourselves. And I always suggest that if you're going to do a co-op, and you're the one with a great idea, and you've really got, you're really jazzed about what you want to do, you go ahead and form a steering committee. So you're not doing it all yourself. You're working with the group who are eventually going to be the members, or at least the initial members of the co-op. They're going to be your initial board of directors, and it really helps with planning and figuring out where you want to go and how you want to get there. So the next question is, how much will expenses be for the first year or two? And where are you going to get those monies from? Are you going to require that the members put in a whole bunch of money to start that first year? Are you going to get a loan? Are you going to try and get funding from other sources? And how much money do you need? Do you need $50,000 to start that first year? Do you need $100,000? Do you need $10,000? You need to figure out those kinds of things and what those services are going to be. If you've got that figured out, then you start working on your membership classifications. As I said previously, you can have multiple members and multiple classifications. We have one co-op that we work with. It's called a multi-stakeholder co-op. It's not a purchasing co-op. It's not a worker co-op. It's not a consumer co-op like REI. It's a combination of all of those. And it started off as a woman started a business, a meditation co-op. It's called Mayu Meditation Co-op here in Denver. And it started off as a sole proprietor years ago. And she wanted the community to participate in her business. So she came to me to form a co-op about 4 years ago. And we came up with different classifications of membership. First classification of membership were the employees, of which there are only 3 or 4 in the business. Then the vendors, the people that taught yoga classes or taught meditation classes or provided other services at the co-op. That was another class of membership. Then we had the consumers. So the members of the public, the people that came in and used the co-op and purchased the services from the co-op, became consumer members of the co-op. And they split that up into different types of consumers. So the people that just came in and bought some incense once a year or bought some music or bought a pillow, that was one kind of member. But then the other members that provided or purchased quite a bit from the co-op and really used the co-op services, they were called supporting members. And the supporting members got voting rights. The employees got voting rights. The investors got voting rights. The other consumer members did not receive voting rights, but they still received benefits from being members of the co-op. So you need to think about who are the members, what are their classes, and what are the classifications that you have. Another thing to think about is director qualifications. Many co-ops have a board of directors. It can be as little as 3 people. As many as 7 to 9 people. I don't really recommend more than that, but if you have a large co-op with many members, like Mayu Meditation now has, I think, 250 supporting members and something like 1,500 regular consumer members. She needs a bigger board of directors to help manage the co-op. But most small co-ops start with 3 members. And you need to think about if it's an employee co-op, and say you've got 10 employees in your co-op, in your worker co-op. Who do you want to be on the board of directors? Does it have to be people that have been there a long time? Does it have to be people that have a certain level of experience, maybe some business background, or they've been with the co-op long enough that they've learned what's required to be a manager of the co-op. You also have founders, the people that started the idea of the co-op. Do they get special treatment? Do they get a seat on the board of directors? Do they get issued preferred stock for maybe all of the sweat equity that they put into the co-op to get it going? And then you need to talk about what kind of tax structure that you want, which kind is preferred, whether you want a corporate tax structure or a partnership tax structure. So legal requirements. I suggest you don't need to talk to an attorney all throughout the process, but I would talk to an attorney before and after your planning steps. Before your planning steps, the attorney can help you with figuring out what the possibilities are, what your options are, and then you guys can go and work together in your steering committee and go through the planning steps and figure out your membership qualifications and your financial questions, and then come back to the attorney for the next step. And the attorney is going to give you information about an articles of incorporation or articles of organization. They are going to create new bylaws or an operating agreement. They're going to create a membership agreement. A membership agreement is important for many different types of co-ops. For example, in a purchasing co-op, a membership agreement might include minimum purchasing requirements that the member is required to make with the co-op in order to stay qualified as a member. It will also discuss what happens when the member leaves the co-op, how any equity that they have in the co-op is returned to the member, and how that is handled by the co-op. If you've got outside investors, then those documents would also be included in the investment documents. And finally, a new EIN and a bank account is how you get started. So you've already heard a couple times today about cooperative conversions. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. I think you got a good overview of how they operate, so I can go through some of this pretty quickly. And then we'll discuss what the differences are between a conversion and starting a new co-op. So in a conversion, you own your own business. You maybe had it for 10, 15, 20, 40 years. You decided that it's time to retire, or you're just tired of doing it all by yourself. So you want your company to become member-owned or employee-owned. There are different ways to do this. You can do it with what's called a straight statutory conversion. There's a document on the Secretary of State's website that says Statement of Conversion. So you can convert your LLC to a co-op at any point in time. What that requires is new articles of organization or articles of incorporation and a change to your bylaws. The other way that you can become member-owned is to sell your business to a worker co-op or to an ESOP. The third option, and that was discussed quite a bit this morning with Ashley, and I don't remember who the other person was. And the third option is to gradually allow your employees to join you in ownership of your business. So if you own an LLC and you and your wife own it, for example, and you're 50-50 ownership of the LLC, maybe you start offering part 10%, 15%, 20% of your business to your employees over a period of time. And gradually, they become owners of the company. You can sell it to them, you can gift it to them. It's up to you. Gifting is always fun. I like gifting, but selling is always also good. It helps with your retirement planning. So the benefits of the conversion you've heard, you can exit the business and get your value. You've spent 30, 40 years of putting this company together. You should definitely be able to look at it as a retirement account, and this can help you to do that. It creates a smooth transition for both the management team and for the employees that are becoming the new owners of the business. If you stay with the company for a year or two during the transition, you can help with that transition. You can help make sure that the employees, for example, know how to read a financial statement. They know how to read a profit and loss statement. They know how to do the jobs that you do for the company that nobody else does. So we usually recommend that the owners stay with the company if they can for a year or two. They may just stay on in the position as a board director, not as an employee of the company. That's also possible. It's a great way to generate income for retirement. It also, believe it or not, enhances the future worth of the business. We find that, and the statistics show that small businesses in particular, it's really difficult to sell them in the broader market. Only about 20% of small businesses actually sell to a third party when they put their companies up for sale. And if you don't have a family member or a management team that wants to take over your business, one way to do it is to sell to your employees, and it makes it, we're finding that employee-owned businesses are more stable than other kinds of businesses, and they really do enhance the worth of the business. It also could reduce the potential for tax impact on your estate if you're a certain type of small business. If you're a C Corp and sell to a worker co-op, there's definite tax advantages. And it also creates a direction for the company's growth. You will know that it continues in business. So you've heard this before: one worker, one shareholder, one vote. Patronage can be based on hours, salary, or a combo. And you've heard these examples: Equal Exchange, Namaste Solar. We put together a home care co-op. We put together a daycare worker co-op. We put together a catering co-op, and the multi-stakeholder co-op, which I've already talked to you about. So converting to a worker co-op does not mean that the current owners are giving up immediate control. It can be a phased-in purchase of the co-op, say 30% of your business one year, 10% of your business, or 20% the next year, etc. And as long as you, the owners, are maintaining an ownership interest in the business, you are not giving up immediate control. It also does not mean collective decision-making. I think Ashley had a good example of this. You don't have to have every employee get together in a group and make decisions every single day. The day-to-day operations of your business will continue pretty much as they are currently. There might be, depending on the size of your business, if you've only got 10 or 15 employees, maybe the employees get together once a month. If you've got bigger business, 40, 50 employees, then you might want to have more departmental meetings that are made up of both the employees and the worker owners. But most co-ops, the members of the co-op don't make day-to-day decisions, whether it's a worker co-op or any other kind of a co-op. They elect the board of directors on an annual basis. They might make decisions on big things like, should we sell the company, or should we buy a building across the street, something like that. But day-to-day decision-making is done by the management team and by the board of directors. And the board of directors sets the policy for the co-op. A co-op is not an entity that creates an open complaint box. So just because you're now an owner of the company doesn't mean that it's just, you can start complaining about everything. You will learn as a new owner that your job is to come up with creative solutions, not just complain. And a co-op is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not suitable for all businesses. I had a doctor one time come to me, ask me, he wanted to sell to all of his employees as a co-op. And so I started talking to him about what his goals are, what his ideas were about what a co-op is and what it's not. And as soon as we got to the one member, one vote, he said, "Oh, I don't like that." He's always been in charge and he wanted to continue to stay in charge. And a co-op is not that kind of a business entity, and was not the appropriate model for him. So we discussed other ways of selling to his employees rather than through a co-op. So the conversion documents for converting to a worker co-op are very similar to what you get with a regular co-op. You have new and revised articles and bylaws. And the articles are changed because you're going obviously from an LLC or an S Corp to an entity that's a different entity. The articles are going to have in there if you're going to have stock or no stock. If you're going to have stock, what kinds of stock? Do you want preferred stock? Do you want just regular common stock? Or if you have multiple classes of membership, all of that goes in the articles. The bylaws are the same. You may have had bylaws as an S corporation, you may not. You may have had an operating agreement, you may not. And one big thing I didn't mention that another form of cooperative entity is a limited liability company, but it's operating on a cooperative basis. And what that means is that the bylaw or the articles of organization and the operating agreement are written in such a way that there's democratic ownership, there's democratic management and governance, and the owners of the company receive profit distributions based on their use of the LLC, not just on an ownership interest. But we can talk about that further if you'd like to. If you have questions about that, please write them down. If you are going to sell your business to a worker co-op, so you have a group of employees, they form the worker co-op themselves. Maybe they lease their services back to the company until such time as the owner is willing to let go of the entire business. So they purchase pieces of it. So you'll have a purchase and sale agreement. And that purchase and sale agreement will talk about the value of the business. And we have resources to give you to find out what the value of your business is if you're going to sell to a worker co-op. It will talk about what the terms are. Is the seller going to finance the purchase? This often happens in a worker co-op conversion where the seller says, these employees will never be able to afford to buy my business. They only make $15 an hour and they can't afford it. And my business is worth, I don't know, $500,000. So maybe the seller sets up a promissory note and the seller, the co-op gives the seller a promissory note for $500,000, and that's paid over a period of 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever the company can afford to do. And so it's called a seller buyback, and that happens often. The purchase agreement might say, well, the employees have to come up with a down payment. So that's included in the purchase and sale agreement. So all of those terms that you would find in a regular transaction, whether you were selling to a co-op or whether you were selling to somebody else, would be included in that purchase and sale agreement. One of the things I tell sellers is that if they are going to go out and look for outside financing, or if the employees are going to go out and look for outside financing, they really should have their books and records in order, because any third-party investor, any third-party bank is going to want to see clean books and records that show a clear indication of what the sales, what the profits, what the liabilities are that the company has had over the last 3 years to 5 years. So think about that when you're thinking about selling your business to either a worker co-op or to a third party. Another conversion document, and it's also not just in conversions, but also in a regular co-op, are membership agreements. And as I mentioned previously, the membership agreements discuss what the cost is for a share of common voting stock. So in a worker co-op, that could be anywhere, I've seen them anywhere from $5, $25, up to $8,000. So depending on the type of company that you have, the type of industry you're in, the type of income your worker owners are receiving, you have all those discussions with them about what their capital contribution is going to be to the co-op. If you're going to have investors, you're going to need investor documents. That includes a subscription agreement. There's going to be disclosures and a whole bunch of Reg D information that I won't talk about today because it's quite a bit complicated. Seller promissory notes I talked about, and bank loans if you're going to do bank loans. I had one co-op where the employees each went and got an individual bank loan for, I think it was $5,000 for each of them to join the co-op. And they got bank loans, and so those bank loan documents may be required as well. So these are some resources of lenders and other capital resources that you can, some are nationwide and some are in Colorado. Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute and the Colorado Solidarity Fund are both here in Colorado. Colorado OEdit, that's the Office of Economic Development, something or other, something or other. has small amounts of funding available for small businesses that want to convert to a worker co-op or to an ESOP. And I think the most that you can apply for is $10,000. But what that covers is some of your technical assistance expenses to hire somebody like the Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership Center for helping with your planning, help with communications between employees, explaining what a co-op is, etc. There's the Colorado Enterprise Fund. The North Country Cooperative Development Fund gives loans to small co-ops. National Co-op Grocers Association, if you want to form a grocery co-op, they have a whole lot of good resources. And then the Colorado Solidarity Fund is a investment co-op here in Colorado that provides funding to some Colorado co-op entities. Some other resources, the Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership Center. Check out our website. We have a lot of blog information on our website. We have a lot of information about co-ops in general. Another one that's a nationwide one, it's called the Sustainable Economies Law Center, SELC.org. They have some great resources on co-ops. The Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, they have a co-op development center that works in the rural communities as well as in Metro Denver. MiCasa Resource Center is really good for training on if you're a new startup co-op and you don't have a good background in bookkeeping or you don't have a good background in management. They're really good for management training and business training. U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops is another one. One I really have gotten to know pretty well in the last year or so are the small business development centers around the state of Colorado. They have resources for all kinds of new startup information and lots of training classes, lots of webinars, and lots of really, really good information and classes. They have long-term classes, 6 and 8 week classes like MiCasa Resource Center has. So that's what I've got for you today, and I hope that was helpful. I hope you weren't too overwhelmed with too much legalese, and do let me know if you have some questions. You can reach me at linda@jrweiner.com or give me a call.
Awesome, Linda. Thank you. You killed it. That was a lot of information, but I loved it.
Good. Good.
I see a question in here, and then if anybody else has questions, just Facebook or YouTube comment feeds, and I'll make sure to have them. So let's see here. F asks, I'm not sure if the pandemic is skewing numbers, but have you observed any upward or downward trend in the creation of co-ops? Is it becoming more or less popular? Do you know why?
Yes, it is becoming more popular, and I'm delighted it's becoming more popular, both nationwide as well as in the state of Colorado. Anecdotally, our firm gets calls at least twice a week from people wanting to start co-ops. Most of them are millennials, and I heard you ask this question earlier.
Yeah.
From Ashley. So I can confirm that it is younger generations. They learn about it in college. They learn about it from friends. They may be a part of a housing co-op and say, "Ooh, that sounds like a good idea." There's not as much information as I would like to see out there about co-ops. So anytime I'm able to talk about co-ops, I'm happy to talk about them.
That's awesome. Well, great. One question that I had actually was about purchasing co-ops. It seems like an interesting arrangement for different industries, and mostly it's about like the membership, and I don't know. I don't think liability is the right term in the strict sense, but how members interact with the purchasing co-op, and whether they have to be equity owners or can they just be members, and related to that, for the purchasing co-op, how does that work out for their revenue or financial statements? I guess in some way I see it as like it's not a pass-through. but
It
very
is,
much taking a
it
pass.
is, it is like a pass-through. And purchasing co-ops are set up slightly differently than other kinds of co-ops. Usually a purchasing co-op, there's a membership fee to join the co-op. And when you become a member of the co-op, you receive either direct discounts from the vendors that have been negotiated by the co-op on behalf of its members, or the co-op sells products from the vendors through the co-op directly to the members. So it's done a couple of different ways.
Okay.
The co-op receives its income from a percentage that it takes from the members from the products that they buy from the vendors. Or the co-op gets its money from the vendors directly as part of the rebate program. So it just depends. But if you've got any kind of an industry where it would be a good idea to come together to do economies of scale, you could almost think of like a rural electric co-op as a purchasing co-op. But it's a whole group of consumers that have gotten together and said, you know, we can get better pricing if there's more of us. So they do that through the co-op.
Got it. That's interesting. Do you see, actually related to that, this is very not direct, but do you see a possibility for internet in that way? You know,
Oh yeah. We talk about it almost every month. I think we talk about, you know, turning Twitter into a consumer co-op, or turning, you know, Facebook into a consumer co-op. And so far we haven't been able to convince them to do that, but it is possible. And there are platform co-ops, what are called platform co-ops, that are online co-ops of members from around the country and around the world that receive services through the co-op. One of them is Savvy Co-op, and that's a co-op of people that receive and provide information about medical services through the co-op. It's really quite a fascinating business model. You should check that out sometime. We've got software developers that are creating co-ops in quite a few places around the country. We've got lots of, you know, Democracy Brewing is a co-op. Left Hand Brewing is an ESOP. So, you know, almost any industry I can think of. The only ones I haven't found a whole lot of co-ops with yet are the manufacturing industries. And I'd love to see that. I'd love to see some big manufacturers turn into worker co-ops, or a combination worker co-op and consumer co-op. It would be fun.
That would be cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you want to go buy a car, you can join the co-op and get a discount, and, you know,
sign me up.
Yeah.
I'm down. I can do that. All right, Linda.
Any other questions?
I think that's it. I think you did such a good job and so thorough. Please, if you have further questions, reach out to her directly. And Linda, thank you for joining us at
You're quite welcome.
2020.
You have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.